everyone. I'm sure you know what time it is because I'm the only one who plays that song. It is time for Generation whY here on solar-powered KRUU FM 100.1, the only solar-powered station of the Midwest, 100% locally produced. And because of that, I'm keeping local these last few weeks. I'm going to remain local for today's show. We have, if anyone follows me on Facebook or Twitter or does a lot of KRUU FM, you'll know I talk with Kristian Day, hopefully once every week. Sometimes it's once every 2 weeks. He's a busy man, but I want to invite him on the show because not only has he done so much to make Fairfield, in my opinion, more livable with a movie theater that's not 30 minutes away, but just so much behind the scenes. Kristian Day attended University of Colorado at Denver, started in the music industry, did music industry studies program, recorded soundtracks for films like 100 Tears, Am I Evil, and designed sound design for Saw 4. Not to mention that besides running the Orpheum, he helped start modern American cinema. He also is a director of marketing for the Donna Reed Foundation. Was the driving force behind Made in Iowa documentary series, and more. So, an incredibly busy man, Kristian, and I appreciate that you were able to take an hour out of your busy day to come to KRUU FM.
I love coming to KRUU FM. I've actually done more things with this radio station than any other radio station. I used to do a lot of stuff with KFMG in Des Moines, which is on top of the Hotel Fort Des Moines. And this is actually I would usually do some type of publicity stuff whenever I would do something new, but I've been literally so busy for the past year. I mean, everything's been so focused on Fairfield and the things I'm doing here that I've been spending almost all my time either here or having you guys come over with your microphones or on the phone with either yourself or Jimmy. And this is kind of like a second home here.
Yeah, well, a lot of credit goes to Jimmy Moore for trying to get the community more involved and get people's voices out, but a lot of credit goes for you for, as I mentioned earlier, I've lived in Fairfield now about 9 months, and I really do enjoy it, but there were times when I was a little bored, and so to have that movie theater is in my opinion, huge. And I would like to actually start with talking about your Fairfield work before we move into the Kristian Day, as I put on Facebook, the legend Kristian Day, with all that you do. You're nice enough to bring me a few movies today. So, Kristian, let's talk about Orpheum Theater. When did it open?
We opened October 1st of last year. Right, we're going on 7 months now.
7 months. And why Orpheum Theater? Why Fairfield?
Well, I'd done some work in Fairfield over the last few years. I really didn't know much about Fairfield until about 2010.
Join my club.
Yeah, not a clue. And I was working on Francis Tickey's campaign commercial in 2010. And I first heard about Fairfield. I was sitting at what was the original Des Moines Social Club at I think it was 319 Grand in Des Moines, the old location, or Locust, 319 Locust. I'm sure I'm wrong with that, but it was election season, and one of his campaign managers from Des Moines, or the campaign manager at the time was from Des Moines, and said that they're shooting a commercial. I had just had my first film, Hybrid Pioneer, come out, and they saw it and they asked if I could be of some assistance. They really didn't know what to do with it, and it was not a good year. If you were running on a Democratic ticket, it was not really a good year for 2010 because it was very much a Republican election. And I said, the only way that this could really work is if you really went for the bipartisan vote. And so I wrote and storyboarded a script on bar napkin at the Des Moines Social Club, and I said, hey, that's neat. And they try to tell me about Fairfield. And, there's Marisha University there, and there's all this stuff. And I knew nothing about it. And I said, well, all right, well, cheers. I'll talk to you later. And a couple days after that, I was called and said, hey, would you come down to set with us? None of us have directed anything before. Would you be able to assist us on this? And I said, okay. And I had a car, a driver pick me up.
Oh, fancy.
And it was really fancy. I've never had anything fancy since then. I'm normally having to fetch my own food and water and find my own rides to places. But yeah, he came and got me and drove me down. And that really wasn't like the Fairfield experience because it was on Francis Tickey's farm, which is outside of town. Mm-hmm. But that's I really picked up on it when I was trying to shoot a scene with Jeff Boothby. I had sent Jeff to go shoot the cows coming in, and I was losing my extras because we were going to do this big crowd scene. And this guy ran up to me like, Mr. Kristian, it's dome time. We're losing all the people. And I was like, what are you talking about? It's cow time, sir. We're shooting the cows. Like, well, you have to shoot this now. We're losing everybody to go to dome. And I'm just like, what? So, is that like church time?
Yeah.
Because it was like on a Wednesday. So I'm like, okay, well, youth group.
Bible study.
And so then I got a really quick, like, crash course of what that was, and I finally had to, I still lost half the people, and I had to take all of my crew and put them in front of the camera to shoot the scene, which was fine. And then a year later, or 2 years later, I had done the Templeton Rye movie, and I was working on another film called Is This Heaven, with activist and former skinhead leader Frank Mink, and we came back to Fairfield. And we were doing like a road tour of spirituality in Iowa. And Iowa is a very eclectic state when it comes to faith and religion. I mean, we have the oldest standing mosque in North America is in Cedar Rapids. And I always say, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm just going by what I know. One of the only towns in America named after a Muslim is in Iowa. It's El Khader, named after Al-Qaeda, who was the George Washington of Algeria. And one of the largest standing Hindu temples is in Madrid, Iowa. And it sits in the middle of a cornfield. So we had all these places here, and Frank Mink and I were touring. We came to Fairfield, and we did a tour of MUM, and that's actually that trip. That trip was the first time I met Jimmy Moore of KRUU FM fame, and I met Tom Morgan. He was sitting at Cafe Paradiso. I remember we were getting the tour, and I was still sort of booking dates for Templeton Rye. I'd already done my main tour of the film, but I thought, this is kind of an electric town. It's kind of hip, kind of like a mini Iowa City. Very mini Iowa City. I saw the co-ed theater, and I said, hey, I wonder if I can get my movie down here. It probably could do very well. And that's when I learned, Chris Johnson owns the building, but the people who operate the theater are not really cooperative. And it was a company out of Missouri. And I called them, and they never called me back. And I sent email after email after email. And then, I just kind of said, whatever, And then it was about 2012, had been 2012, end of 2012. I heard about the company going bankrupt, and the theater was sitting empty. And the Johnsons had heard about me through the grapevine because I've toured so much in Iowa, and I've done a lot of film work in different towns, and they said, well, we have two options here. Either we're going to turn this into storage units, or we could do something that's very eclectic and make a theater that really fits this town, because up until this point, the theater has really never fit the town, because it never really worked as a standard, blockbuster theater. There's just not enough. I mean, it's still a small population.
Yeah.
And a third of the population doesn't care about blockbusters. So you have to do kind of a mix of blockbusters and art house films or independent films to make it really work. So we worked together on it, and I had made some money from the Templeton Rye film, and I had this huge problem. Every time I try to pay off my student loans, I never do. I go and invest in something, and sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. We made a deal. The Johnsons invested a lot of money into the physical remodel, and I invested the money into the technology side. So the digital projection, the new sound system, the seats, which, all those things really needed to have happen. The people who remember going to movies at the co-ed will probably tell you stories about the chairs were a mess, the floors were, when we were removing the seats or putting the seats in, I remember just the layers of slime that was on the legs from like spilled
Yeah,
soda.
and like the bottom of movie seats is like gum paradise.
That is. I am very serious about no gum in that room.
That's fair. Because people don't. I mean, they're like, oh, I'll just put it under here. No one will ever notice.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah.
So we're in there. We put those seats in with our bare hands, and so it opened October 1st, and it was interesting. In September, I always kept thinking, are we going to open? Is this actually going to happen? I was losing my will to live putting in seats. I hated every second of it, and we were part of the time we were staying at the Rook Report out in Vedic City, and then part of the time sleeping on the floor. Blew up an air mattress and sleeping on the floor. I'll tell you, sleeping in there by yourself is really
scary.
Oh yeah,
I can imagine.
It was spooky. I was sleeping in the mop room, and I was like, I'm here for one reason, is to get this thing open. So I would just come down, punk rock it up, and crash, and just we just kept working. And then it opened, and it's been a very long haul. It's changed as we've gone, and when we first opened, the situation was, when we first opened, we really only could show some art house films, because when you fill out contracts with studios, they want your serial number for your projector. Well, I couldn't do that ahead of time, so we literally got our projector a week before we opened.
Why do they want the serial number?
Because it's all digital now. It's all Big Brother, so they watch everything you do.
Yeah.
And so you get the projector, then you fill out the forms. It takes like 4 to 5 weeks just to get an answer back from the studios. And at that point, we're open. We need to pay rent. We need to do this. So we I had to start showing. And basically, there's some studios will show hard drive films on hard drives. Some studios will send Blu-rays, and I was able to get films from Magnolia Pictures, and that's where Muscle Shoals came from. Which Muscle Shoals was first. Yeah, it was our first doorbuster. I believe it was the first, the second from the first thing we had was the Manhattan Short Film Festival, which a lot of people really enjoyed. And then we got Muscle Shoals, and Muscle Shoals did extremely well. It was our first film we ever held over for 2 weeks. And so I try to keep it diverse when I book films. I do all the booking. I work directly with studios. I do not hire a booker, and the reason why is because it has been proven no one else really understands Fairfield in that sense. And then maybe sometimes people who understand Fairfield don't understand how the film business on that side works.
How important is it then for an owner of a theater like yourself to be able to understand the town? I mean, this probably isn't a town where blockbuster movies would even do that well for the most part.
I mean, some will do okay. The ones Catching Fire did really well. But that's an awesome series,
Yeah,
it's
except
solid.
for the third book. Horrible. Sorry. Just it's like Catching the Rye sci-fi.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to hear a woman complain or a man complain for a whole book. But I'm sorry.
I always compare it to Battle Royale.
Yeah, fair.
But when it comes to the blockbusters, I have to see, will I get both demographics of the town? I mean, I do try to see things from an outsider's perspective. Noah did okay, like Mr. Peabody and Sherman. Like, I don't do many kids films. So this really isn't a youth town in that sense.
No, I think the median age I remember reading was like 50 something, which excited me when I came.
Yeah,
good.
I
love older women.
I mean. So it's not like going to another small town where it's majority young families. It's not like a suburb thing. So, I've gotten some kids films, but they just don't do very well. And so I try to go for looking for films that will appeal. I do, like, during the winter, my main audience is probably 40 plus, you know? And I looked at it this way, that I'm not going to get a bunch of young kids in the middle of January on a Tuesday night. Right. It's not going to happen. So I try to appeal to adults, young adults, team trivia nights, I really try to appeal to a specific people that I see all the time that are into these things. I mean, some of it's a little higher brow with the films, but when it comes down to the books and numbers, I mean, you've got to do what's gonna bring money in. Yeah. And there are some things I'm like, oh, this would be really cool to see. Like Under the Skin was kind of a risk, but Under the Skin's it did better than Mr. Peabody and Sherman. It did better than Noah.
I saw it.
It's that type of film can go really well. It has Scarlett Johansson, which is a good name. I think probably one of the best things we ever did was Grand Budapest.
Yeah, I'm sure. Well, it's just that style of movie just seems like the Fairfield style, in my opinion.
It kind of seems like Fairfield in general.
It's like watching a documentary.
Yeah, I always tell people, it's like, have you ever seen Royal Tenenbaums? That's kind of what Fairfield's like.
I actually was talking to someone about that. I was like, I was like trying to, they're like, oh, I don't really get your town. I was like, well, neither do I. But the best way I can explain it is, again, we're joined with Kristian Day right now. He's the owner of the Orpheum Theater. You're listening to Generation whY 100.1. Kristian Day gave us a little bit of history lesson, and now we're talking about the movies. And he's telling us the story behind the start of the Orpheum Theater. And it's interesting because it is a theater, but you guys do a lot of things that don't really have to do with movies. I mean, you've had jazz shows, burlesque troupe. Talk a little bit about that. Is that your way of trying to work with the town, or is that something that you had envisioned when you started?
Part of that comes from a community involvement situation. When it wouldn't survive as just a movie theater. I mean, not when you have a Tumwa so far or so close. I mean, 30 miles is actually kind of far, but. I mean, and really, let's be honest, no one really wants to drive to Ottumwa.
Yes, I've done it twice, and both times
you're like, oh man, this is terrible.
Yeah,
and Ottumwa's gross. Did I say that? Man, this is how I ruin my relationships. Is when I say stuff.
It's important, especially in this town, to be honest. Yeah. And if being honest is you saying that Ottumwa is a little bit gross, well, that's just honesty.
The rest of Iowa agrees. So, when I tell people I drive past Ottumwa and I'm in Des Moines, and they're like, "Where's Fairfield?" Well, it's about 30 miles, 20 miles away from Ottumwa. And they're like, "Oh man, Ottumwa."
I've been.
And so, part of it's working with the town. I like doing the Beards improv comedy. It does really well. We've sold out every show, or come close to selling out every show. The burlesque show we sold out last 2 shows, February, and now we're doing it again. And we donate the proceeds to different charities. Like the first one, we donated $1,000 to the women's shelter of Ottumwa, and then this weekend we're donating the proceeds to the Donna Reed Foundation,
which for people who don't know, you are the director of marketing for them, right?
I am. Yeah. That's a whole other. I guess. Do you want to get into that now?
We will. Okay. We will get into it. There's a lot that Kristian. I remember doing the research. I told you this. I did the research for you, and I was like, okay, he does this. Oh, it turns out he does this. Does this. I don't know how you. I assume you don't have a lot of free time.
I don't, and it makes it really hard because my social life and my business life is pretty much the same thing, and that is it's not really that healthy because when some people go to a job and when they go home they can shut off and forget about it and compartmentalize everything, and I can't.
Yeah, it's you and James Moore.
Yeah, that is something that we are very similar to, except I drink, which is just not a good mix. Because that's how I put that away. That is, dealing with all of it and being involved, but at the same time, where our parents may have said, get a good job, you'll be fine, and have a solid career and develop, and I don't believe that anymore.
No.
I believe you have to have like 7 sources of income to even survive and actually have a decent life and be connected, because my biggest thing, you have one job. Well, if it goes away, you're done.
Yeah.
I don't ever want to be in that position. I like having these other things. So if one thing goes away, oh, well, that's just one thing I can replace it. I have all these other things that are taking care of what I need to take care of. So, that's why we do so much at the Orpheum. It's the same situation. I mean, that different sources of income can translate into a business. It can translate to an individual. So that's why we do different shows. We do jazz shows. We do the burlesque. We do the comedy shows. We do team trivia. It's like when I tell my team, I said, okay, we got the movie part figured out. What can we do? We have this huge cafe lobby space. What do we want to do in here? There's so much opportunity.
And you guys do, you have art shows, I know. Here's a question though I want to ask you, because I have friends who say this, and I don't know if they're pretentious or correct. In your mind, is there a difference between a movie and a film? Because
it is a pretentious way of saying it. I've had some people say that to me. Well, a film. When people say film, I always refer to the stock. It's film stock. It makes it film. I don't know. The people who get that, who say, well, that's just them turning up their nose at things.
The same people who say, oh, I went and saw an off-Broadway play.
Yeah, well, good for you. It's just a show.
Hipsters.
Yeah, hipsters. Well, I have season passes to the Civic Center in Des Moines. I see both Broadway musicals and off Broadway, and I honestly I could not tell it. I just saw once.
Yeah.
A couple weeks ago. Great play. And I think before that, what was it before that? But I mean, I've seen like Jersey Boys. I saw
great
Book
musical.
of Mormon. Oh, Jersey Boys.
Book of Mormon was amazing.
Actually, I'm just gonna throw this out there that they're making a Jersey Boys feature film, and I can guarantee you I will be getting that because I love that. I love that show.
It's fantastic.
Oh, it's so awesome. But I don't know when people get that pretentious. I think that's them trying to want. I mean, it's funny. And I feel this in Fairfield. When I come to Fairfield, when I meet new people, the first thing, especially, it was really more in the beginning, is that each person is trying to up me on their experience of the world. Well, I've done this, this, and this, or I've done this, this, and this. And I'm just like, yeah, man, okay.
Sounds nice.
And a lot of people here, the first thing they'll say is, well, I'm not from Iowa. I'm from New Jersey. Or you're from New Jersey.
Oh, man, I said that well, when I first moved here. It was, did you move here for the movement? And I was like, what are you guys talking about? It sounds very Stepford Wives. And so I'd be like, oh, no, I'm not from here. So I admit to that.
Yes, you do. But I think some people it's almost the embarrassment of Iowa. And I do take that a little bit offensively.
I can understand.
Because Fairfield is not the cultural headquarters of Iowa. There's some serious other places here. There's some great towns that have a lot of great things happening. It's why I will not, I have an apartment here. So when I'm in town working, that's where I'm at. But I would never move away from Des Moines because culturally I get more out of it. I'm not going to see the Broadway shows that I see in Des Moines down here.
Of course.
It's not. And they would never come here. It's too small. I mean, the fact of the matter is Fairfield is still a town of 10,000 people.
Yes.
No matter how you look at it. And I know when people come here and they have this idea that we're going to boost it in a sense that we're going to make it much more metropolitan. That's not how that's going to work.
This doesn't strike me as a town that would
socially, because of the smaller population, it's going to simulate to more small town rule, no matter who's here. That's just how that's going to change.
Yeah.
So I mean, I like the fact that there's things here that most small towns do not have. That's why we have the theater, because the way we do our films and the film selections in our shows, it makes sense to do it here, and it would not work any other way. But there's other things. I always talk about Fairfield's this cool bubble. There's really amazing things happening in Fairfield. But then no one knows. Everyone ignores the cool stuff happening outside of that bubble. But then everyone on the outside of that bubble, no one knows what's going on inside of it either. I love to tell people, in Des Moines, you need to come to Fairfield. Come to Art Walk Night. You need to come to this. There's some really cool things happening. But then I also tell people here, I'm like, you should come to Des Moines. You should come check this out. This is really cool.
Yeah.
And part of that is because the southeast corner of Iowa is definitely secluded. You're not that close to Iowa City. You're not that close to Des Moines. And those are really the two main places. Now, there's also Davenport. Davenport has a lot of things happening for it. Dubuque has a lot of things happening for it. Cedar Rapids has come a long way since the flood of 08. And they've kind of took that as a way to rebuild, and now it's becoming a more youthful town. Even Denison, which is about the same population as Fairfield, which was very, very blue collar, it was 50% Latino, 50% white, and they did not like each other. And now they have a young mayor who's like 38 years old. They have a lot of young professionals and making it a really cool place to be. So there's a lot of things happening all around, and I just wish everything would kind of just connect and work and associate and accept, so when someone tells me, well, I'm not from here, I'm like, oh, okay, you know. And if they say, well, I'm from San Francisco, yeah, San Francisco like 20 years ago, you know, you weren't,
Yeah.
It's not like you just got here like last week. You've been here, you know, after a certain time, you have to accept that you are no longer a Californian. You are no longer a New Yorker. You are an Iowan.
Or a Fairfieldian.
Fairfieldian. That's a whole thing of its own.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's certainly interesting. I mean, this might be one of the more unique small towns
it's an amazingly
country.
unique small town. Yeah, and I think it's very great. I mean, I wouldn't do the theater project in any other small town. I would have to resort to just Iowa City, maybe Cedar Rapids. Des Moines already has 2 great art house theaters that I love, the Floor and the Varsity. You know, I wouldn't be able to do it anywhere else. So it's great that it can happen here.
Again, Kristian Day, he's made a ton of movies. They've even been shown in Austria, Greece, Italy, all across America, Dallas, Los Angeles, New York, Chicago. As someone who makes movies, I always wonder this question. Do you ever read a book or see a movie and think, man, I could make this into such a better movie, or in the book's case, a great movie? I mean, is your mind always on directing, on seeing things and thinking, well, there's potential here? Or is that more just me imagining that?
Yeah. Hybrid Pioneer came out by accident. The only one of those films, I guess, you have my DVDs there. Hybrid Pioneer, that happened. I made it for $200, and it did extraordinarily well. And when I say extraordinarily well, it means people booked it, you know?
Yeah.
Brent, who that movie's about, Brent Housengay, did some work for me, did some artwork for me, and I didn't have any money to pay him, so I said I'd make a little promotional video or art film with him. And it turned into this documentary that we shot, and I had no idea what I was trying to make, but it became a documentary, and Brent's the subject matter, but it really focuses on the underground art scene of Des Moines and the DIY movement at that time. It still kind of exists, but not like it did. But there was a bunch of us. It was kind of like Warhol's factory, but it was spread out. Like there was these different warehouses and different venues that people were doing art shows. Like you can do art shows in Des Moines bars, and like the Lift always has an art show. All the coffee shops have art shows, which that's what inspired me to do the art show. Have art shows at the Orpheum. It's like, we have this wall space, let's make use of it and have it change out all the time. And he taught me, I mean, I was always pretty much the do-it-yourself DIY, but watching him and working with him, we kind of we fell in love with the idea of DIY or die. So do it yourself. Now it's to the point where I can no longer do it myself. I'm actually looking for help, and I'm hiring people to help me with these things. Hybrid Pioneer went off, and we premiered it at the Des Moines Social Club, and filled the house. We had like 80 people, and had drink specials, and so it was a fun time. And it went off to screen in New York, Atlanta, Minneapolis, Chicago, and it did an art gallery tour. Basically, where he was doing art shows, I had the film also set up as an installation, so they're playing the documentary on a loop. And then Permanent Collection Tattoo, which is one of the largest tattoo chains in North America, they sponsored the DVD release. But the artwork was very punk rock. I mean, we did it. I mean, I had no crew. It was me and a camera.
Right.
Okay, so like the microphone was a shotgun mic that I had duct taped to the top of the camera so I could get the best sound I could. No lights, so all the lighting was natural lighting. We set up shots. We did the motorcycle shots. I mean, I was sitting. We somehow pushed a love seat into the back of a minivan where I had to set the camera on, and there was no seatbelt. We had the door open in the back, and we're driving through Des Moines, and since I had no way to hold myself down, I had to take my arm and wrap around the back of a seatbelt.
So like ghost riding.
Kind of, yeah.
Ghost riding the whip.
Yeah.
Way to go, Kristian.
But then the camera came off the tripod, so it was not connected to anything. So I was having to put all my weight forward and hold myself from falling out to get the shot.
It's a dangerous life being a director.
It was very dangerous.
Everyone talks about it.
It was very dangerous. So that one just kind of happened by accident. Now, Templeton Rye was an idea that I thought would be had a lot of potential. I mean, most people now, Templeton Rye has really blown up since that movie came out, and it's not at all because of the movie. It's because they've really pushed it themselves. But in 2011, I spent the entire year shooting it. I had a budget. It was $24,000, which is not much, but I was living off. I mean, this just goes back to the DIY thing. I lived off $8,000 for almost that entire year, so I can make that movie. And it was blood, sweat, and I was exhausting. I remember driving back. I had at 5 a.m. when I drove to Dubuque, and I didn't leave until 9 at night, and I fell asleep at the wheel coming back, and I crashed my car into a concrete barrier. I mean, it was just pure exhaustion. But the film got the widest release of all my movies. I mean, I even had a television spinoff that was on Iowa Public Television when it was a sister show to Ken Burns' Prohibition. It was called Templeton Rye, Iowa's Good Stuff, and it was made with the movie. The actual feature film was not done. Capone's Whiskey was not done.
Right.
So I had to take the footage I had already and stuff that I was going to cut out, but I liked, and made a second film. And showed that on television, and then that movie premiered in December. It was on the anniversary of Prohibition, of the repeal of Prohibition, is when that movie premiered.
December this year?
No, of 2011. And then 2012, it toured theaters, and I got into 43 theaters, got a DVD release, and it still sells. I mean, it's my most popular film down here. I the closest it got to Fairfield was in Mount Pleasant in September of 2012. But it played, it played Chicago for Whiskey Fest, won an award at some festival in Ohio. You can tell how much I care about festivals. Some festival. I don't even think I even mentioned it on that DVD. I hate festivals.
You do not. I was going to say, I'm looking at it. Why do you hate festivals?
Because it's totally, festivals are such a, I don't know.
You can be honest here.
I hate them. I really do. And I hate saying that because I actually produce a festival in Des Moines. But
that should be the tagline.
Yeah. I actually love that festival because it doesn't cost people to get in. I have a problem where the filmmakers have to pay to submit, and then the audience has to pay to see it. And I hate that. Okay, so if a filmmaker...
So you hate the bureaucracy.
Oh, totally. Because the whole point is you will not make money at a festival.
Yeah.
Unless, honestly, it's a big festival where the festival itself may fly you out there, Sundance or Cannes or Telluride. Yeah. The bigger ones will. But these other ones, all it is whoever, the only one who wins on that, on all these small festivals, is the person putting on the festival, who's the programmer, who's getting money from both ends. He's getting money from the filmmaker, he's getting money from the audience, and no one wins. And it's not a buyer's market. If it was a buyer's market where there are people there buying the rights to films to distribute, that would be one thing. But they're not and they're not there at those small festivals. So to me, see, I'm raising my voice right now. I'm sorry.
No, you gotta get. Sometimes I like the emotion. I like the spirit.
So it is a bunch of garbage, and I remember a lot of people here want me to do a festival, and I'm just like, because, from a standpoint, and I understand why there has to be fees and things like that, but, I also, I don't pay for festivals. When I submit to festivals, I submit to foreign festivals that are usually run by a nonprofit or have a sponsor. That doesn't cost me anything to submit to. I know I do the Nihilist festival in LA all the time. I also submit to it's in Big Sur. It's at the Henry Miller. It's the Big Sur Film Festival at the Henry Miller Library. And then again, most of it's foreign because the foreign market. I'm really into the foreign market. I love sending my films.
Movies. There's
some cool stuff there, and my stuff does well over there. I've made money on my short films there, which most people don't make any money on short films. But I always submit them overseas, and they get picked up and licensed for different festivals and programming. And I've had a couple museum pieces, including like the microscope film I did. All that stuff,
which we'll talk about.
Yeah, that's the place. That's where I like it. Now, the other film that you have here, this is James Bearden, Man of Metals. That actually was originally commissioned a year before Templeton Rye was made, but didn't come out until a year and a half after Templeton Rye was out. There is an artist who I work with on there that is James Bearden. He's his agent came to a screening of mine at I think it was at Mars Cafe. It was a really ghetto DIY screening of Hybrid Pioneer where we plugged in we had a DVD player, projector, and the audio from the DVD player went into a bass amp.
So yeah.
Yeah. So it was mono, and
Any way you can do it.
Yeah, any way you can do it. But she was there, and Stephanie O'Neill is an amazing woman. She's a little nuts, but she's an amazing woman, and she walks in with her fur coats and talking about her artist, James Anthony Bearden, and she said, "Would you make a documentary about James?" And me being Mr. Pretentious at the time, I said, I've already made an artist documentary. I don't want to do that again. And I said, but I would be interested in doing something more creative with him. And we ended up producing a film that was kind of an essay style movie, which is not essay films don't really exist anymore. Only a few people.
What do you mean by essay films?
Well, yeah, it's kind of a hybrid of documentary and fiction, and so you do stuff with interpretation and things like that. And I guess the only films that I can even say that are even similar are F for Fake, which is directed by Orson Welles. It was the last film he ever made. And then John Jost, he did Speaking Directly. And it's a sort of a mix of, there's a documentary element to it, but then you'll throw in some wild stuff. Like I had these girls that were stripped down naked and painted to look like his sculptures. So they were like his muse that were materializing, his ideas. So while he's welding, sparks are flying, you'll see like these female figures, around him. And it was really fun. I got to work with a really close friend of mine named Emily Savak, who's a big body painter in Des Moines. If you ever see pictures of 8035 and you see painted ladies, that's her work. Very, very close friend of mine. And that movie was actually the first film that I got to shoot. It was partly with an HDV camera, and then my gear got stolen, and then I finished the film with my iPhone. And actually, what you're holding in your hand, all the shots that you're seeing on that DVD cover, even though the people listening cannot see it, was all iPhone. That's all iPhone, and it blew my mind because, that camera was outdated anyways. It had a great lens on it and shot really cool. But I mean, I'm like, well, what does this really mean? This to me means that. It just liberated me,
Well, God, technology has come quite. I mean, I have a camera at home, 4 years old, and my S4 Samsung Galaxy's camera is much better. I don't even use my other camera now. And all the movies we're talking about, Hybrid Pioneer, story of Templeton Rye, James Bearden, Man of Metals, this is all Made in Iowa documentary series and part of the modern American cinema, which you were both major player, and you're a major player in both. That would be the grammatically correct sentence. And we're going to take a music break, but I'm not so sure. I think we're going to play the song at the end and just keep going, because I like where this is headed, and there's still so much to talk about. So because I do want to talk about, the Iowa Music Buzz, that you're the managing editor and marketing for the Donna Reed Foundation, if we have time, but talk a little bit about the Made in Iowa documentary series and also your Modern American Cinema.
Well, Modern American Cinema was started as a production company. It was formed around the time that I did, before Hybrid Pioneer, I produced a small film for a German company called Manic. And it was called Fell, starring Jeff Dylan Graham and Katie Walters. It was directed by Marcus Cook. It it was actually, when I think back to it, it was kind of a nightmare to make. But I wanted something that sounded sort of professional. I was really into the films of Sam Arkoff and James Nicholson from AIP, American International Pictures, which Sam was from Fort Dodge, Iowa, and James Nicholson was from Omaha, Nebraska. And AIP, they launched a lot of careers. Roger Corman, they did a lot of the released a lot of the Vincent Price films, like the Edgar Allan Poe stuff, and I wanted something that it could be abbreviated easily, even though I hate it when people say Mac. It's MAC, MAC. But I wanted something that sounded strong, and a lot of people come up with these stupid production names, production company names, and I wanted something that was more serious and I could be translated to other things. Like, I wouldn't be afraid to put it on a television show. I wouldn't be afraid to put it on whatever. So Modern American Cinema started in 2009, which is when we did Fell. We did it for we literally did it for $2,000 for a German company called Manic, and they normally did horror films. And it was the same investor who did 100 Tears, who invested in 100 Tears.
Okay.
And Marcus, who directed 100 Tears, directed Fell. And he flew to Iowa. We shot in Iowa. We shot in my house. If you want a tour of my house when I first moved in, see Fell. I think actually the distributor who bought it from us actually put it on YouTube for free. If you look for it, that was a little weird to do it, but it got released. It actually opened in Ireland in 2011, I think. It's funny. I tried so hard to get out of the horror scene, which is where I started,
right.
Which we haven't even talked about that stuff. And now there's a part of me that wants to go back.
Back to the horror?
Yeah, you go back to that genre stuff. But so Modern American Cinema started with that, and then I kept it on there because I really like the name. And then Made in Iowa documentary series landed on Hybrid Pioneers. It was the first thing to go on the Hybrid the first film it was on was Hybrid Pioneer, and I really wanted to do this series of Iowa stories that I was into. Now, technically, Man of Metals is a Made in Iowa documentary too, but it's way it's way more left field. But Capone's Whiskey and Iowa's Good Stuff are both solid, Made in Iowa stories. The next one is Black's Gaslight Village, which is a place kind of like a artist commune in Iowa City, where a lot of the people involved in the writer's workshop settle that. This residence that it's like 4 buildings, and there's a tree growing inside one of the buildings. There's bowling balls on the wall. There's tombstones, embedded in the walls. It's wild. So I try to do things that are a little more obscure. I really don't care about general Iowa stories. I mean, everyone knows them, And honestly, even the Templeton Rye story. The only reason, at the time, no one really knew much about it, and it made sense because there was so much mystique, and there was these people were dying, and I had to get the stories before.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk a little bit then. Well, I want to ask you a question that I don't know if you'll even be able to answer, because as a movie buff such as you are, it's probably difficult to say, but as a movie man, can you tell me what either your favorite movie is, or maybe what your least favorite movie is? I'd be interested in both. But okay. I know it's probably a hard question.
It's a really hard question. It's a really, really hard question. I think my favorite movie ever made, and I've said this numerous times, and I feel like I can be solid about it and say that it is definitely, it's been my favorite for long enough, and that is Once Upon a Time in the West, directed by Sergio Leone, and Charles Bronson's in it, and that movie, Henry Fonda, Claudia Cardinelli. That is like my movie, and you can't make a movie like that anymore. It's so long, and like that opening shot where they're waiting for harmonica to show up at the train station, you can't do that anymore. No one would sit through that. But that movie
it's interesting.
It's really interesting, but I love that movie.
It's funny watching like old movies. I mean, I took some film classes watching old movies, Citizen Kane, Casablanca, all these movies that are classics, and you watch them and you love it because they're original. But today, it's if Casablanca came out today, it's a story that's been told 100 times. And seeing those old movies, I mean, because that's an old movie, right? When did that come out? Do you have any idea? When not Casablanca, the
yeah. I do like to watch a lot of old. I'm really
old movies are fantastic.
Yeah, I like a lot of westerns. I actually like the old Django movies. Django Unchained came out a couple years ago, but I was already a huge fan of the original Django, and I mean that opening scene when he's walking into the town dragging a coffin on chains. I was like, that is so righteous. It's just like in Once Upon a Time in the West when Fonda first appears with their dusters. Henry Fonda shows up, and they have the child still alive. Then they ask him, "What do we do with this guy? With this one, Frank?" And he's like, "Well, now that you called me by name," and then he shoots the kid in the face. I mean, that's so like intense. And even the beginning of it, when Charles Bronson meets the three guys with the dusters, and they're there to kill him, and he's like, are you Frank? And they're like, no, Frank said us. And he's like, oh, looks like we're shy one horse. And he looks at them and he says, no, you got too many. I mean, that was such an I just like that's
one of those scenes that you just remember. Yeah.
It was so awesome.
It's like I'm a big fan of Usual Suspects and just like the devil.
Yeah. I love that stuff. I mean, it's just they're solid films, and even now, I don't think any of those films could,
make it today.
Yeah, I don't think they could.
If I was making a movie, Kristian, and it was about Christian Day, who's playing Christian Day?
Oh, wow, Jesus Christ, I don't know.
You think Jesus would?
Jesus would play Christian Day.
Jesus would? Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think anyone would want to play Christian Day.
Well, someone's going to want. I mean, let's say I'm offering a lot of millions.
I wouldn't want to play Christian Day, and I have to. Well, I would. I don't know. I don't know if I can even answer that question. I don't. That's so like. I feel like whatever answer I give, that would be very egotistical. So.
Well. Fair, but okay, all right, that's fair. So we'll say, well, I guess if it's a documentary, I was going to say, but you'd play yourself, I'd imagine, in a documentary.
I don't know. Should I do like what's his name? The movie Private Part, Howard Stern, how he plays himself.
Yeah, he plays himself. I forgot about that movie. That's a great movie. Just on the plane the whole time, telling a story, and oh man, Howard Stern.
If Peter Fonda was like 40 years younger. Yeah, because I like the way he wears aviators.
Well, Tom Cruise wasn't as crazy as he was. I think Tom Cruise would be a good Christian Day.
I don't know.
You don't think so?
He'd be a terrible Christian Day.
You think so?
Yeah, I'm not into. The only time I've ever really liked Tom Cruise was in Eyes Wide Shut.
What about Collateral? I love that with him and Jamie. I thought that was a great movie. I kind of like the whole gray streak in the hair, but I have a feeling you have a better understanding of movies.
Yeah, well, I should say no, because understanding of movies. I mean, no one actually has like an understanding of movies. Right, I think everyone, it's his personal taste.
That is true. That is true.
Yeah, I'll say that. Peter Fonda, if he was like 40 years younger.
Well, if he's listening, the offer is. I have a feeling he's not, but if he is, the offer is on the table.
Yeah,
I guess he'd have to be a little younger. But is there a movie that you've always wanted to make? A story that that you've always said, well, one day I would like this to be a film, maybe a documentary, or just
there is one that's been sitting. I've written the script. It's been sitting. It's literally been sitting in a drawer for 6 years, and it's called Feather of a Bird, and it deals with mental illness. I'm not going to say too much because there's a chance that I still could make it, but I'm really into understanding mental illness. I've also I'm not going to go into that, but there's I like things that really delves into the mind. Like a buddy of mine from Iowa City, he and I always throw ideas back and forth to each other. And one idea he threw at me was like, I would love to do a movie of what blind people would dream about. And I'm just like, that blew my mind.
Yeah, that's a really interesting idea.
What? That is nuts. And I was like, that'd be a great idea. I don't know how the hell he would do it.
Yeah.
I mean, things like that is what we throw at each other, and it just seems so far, so far away. The mental illness stuff, the things I think about with that when we were talking, I've even gotten to the point of breaking down the script and doing the set design is, what if I was on a date I ruined the date by saying this. I was on the date with this girl back in 2008, 2009, and I said, what, do you think people with Down syndrome know they have Down syndrome? Do you think people with mental illness actually know they have a mental illness?
I actually heard that that's a great way to keep a date conversation going.
Yeah,
Well
you want
played.
to talk about a date ending badly. And I said, you and I could totally have Down syndrome. We would never know. And that was the end of that.
Yeah, so I'd imagine, but you tried.
We could be thinking we're just, normal doing our thing, but
It's the Catch-22. It's the classic Catch-22.
Yeah. I mean, it was like we could both have, what if we were in a wheelchair and we didn't know it? Like, what if we were that catatonic or whatever? I was throwing those ideas around, like, what how do they think? If a mind is so far gone, what is really going on up there? Like, where it makes sense to them, So that was into that, and but that was kind of the premise of what Feather the Bird is about.
Right.
Again, I'm not going to go into details because that is like my baby.
Right.
But it dealt with through the eyes of someone with mental illness, where they actually feel that their mind is normal.
Mm-hmm.
So
and
there's a love story involved in it too. But they think of simple things like, what do they know about? They don't know about, like, I'm a computer engineer. They know about, there's the mailman.
Right.
There's the police officer. Simple things.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. It reminds me of some quotes from Tropic Thunder, which I will not say on air, but it is an interesting. It's a fascinating thing. I have a lot of friends who work in mental illness, and it'd be a really interesting movie to make. What is interesting is I don't think we've even gotten to a third of the things I wanted to talk about, so we can maybe make this, if you're interested, a two-parter to continue next Thursday, if one such as Kristian Day has the time, but we will figure that out after. Right now, we are talking to Kristian Day, running out of time, about 2 minutes. I want to get one of his songs in. Kristian Day helped start Made in Iowa, editor of Iowa Music Buzz, marketing for Donna Reed, Modern American Cinema, all of these amazing things, owner of Orpheum Theater. Not to be confused, I found out, here's a fun fact for you, Kristian, there is an ultra-marathon runner also called Kristian Day. Just so you know, you can keep that in your back pocket. No offense.
Kristian, I know him.
You know him?
Yeah. He and I, in fact, my cousin met his cousin. He's in New Zealand, and we're friends on Facebook. And whenever we communicate, we talk about how we break the internet. Kristian's a really cool guy. Like, he's got, at one time when I met him, he had dreadlocks, and now he's got short hair. But we both run marathons, and he's a really cool guy. He's a really cool guy.
I looked up and I was like, oh, Kristian Day runs ultra marathons. Then I was like, that's not my Kristian Day.
Yeah, we're both
Day.
similar. We're both they're like, that's not my Kristian Day.
I was very upset at him.
He's a really cool guy. Yeah, I mean, he and I are friends, and it totally breaks the internet whenever we communicate.
Mm-hmm. So, Kristian, quickly, we have about 2 minutes. I want to play one of your songs, Orpheum Theater. Let's imagine that this is a weekly interview. What's playing this upcoming week at the Orpheum Theater?
We got Tim's Vermeer is starting tomorrow. Okay. And then tomorrow night, we have the burlesque show.
Great.
Is it Blooming Beauties? Blooming Beauties? We got then Tim's Vermeer will run for a week, and both this weekend we got Tim's Vermeer and the burlesque show. Next weekend we got Bicycling with Molay, which is our French import, and then we also are getting the week after that with Tom Hardy. We're getting Locke. And then I think after that, we should be getting Godzilla pretty soon.
You excited for that?
I am super excited for Godzilla. Yeah, I can't even tell you how excited I am for Godzilla.
Well, it's definitely, I'll try to see more, but that sounds great. And if I wanted to go to your website or the Orpheum's website, Can you tell me the details?
Yeah, KristianDay.com, KRISTIANDAY.com.
Can I just say I love the picture of you there?
Oh,
kind
which
of
one?
eyes wide shut. And
Oh, is it the one with like the split?
Yeah.
My mugshot.
Yeah, it's adorable.
That was my passport photo.
Was it?
Yeah.
Interesting. It's a great picture.
I like this. Is neat. Snap. And then
So artsy, Kristian.
yeah, I try not to be. And then the Orpheum Theater, Fairfield.com.
All right, and we're about to play a song that I don't think I'll be able to pronounce the first part of it.
Protozoa Drops. This is the
makes
first
so much
song
sense.
when I was 18 years old that got radio play, and it was inspired by a song called Dripsody that was made entirely with a drop of water.
All right, so this was Generation Y, Solar Powered KRUU FM 100.1 with the great Kristian Day. Hopefully we'll get him to come back next week or in the following weeks because we didn't even talk about 90% of what I wanted to talk about. But that's just because you're so interesting, Kristian.
I'm interesting. Yeah.
To me at least.
To you.
Have a great day. This is Solar Powered KRUU FM 100.1.